Welcome to Walk in Truth. These are the Bible teachings of Pastor Michael Lantz, equipping you to reach out with God's truth to all people and how to apply that truth to today's issues, trends, and culture. Learn more about the program and our ministry when you visit walkintruth.com. Now here's part 2 of Pastor Michael's son, Pastor Shane's teaching in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 called One Body, Many Parts.
I grew up like playing Little League and going to Miguel's. So I could eat Miguel's or In-N-Out. I worked at In-N-Out for 5 years, and I ate it pretty much every day, which goes to show you that it's quality ingredients, because I stayed in decent shape throughout that time. This is a shameless plug for In-N-Out Burger. It's a good company, but I could eat In-N-Out or Miguel's any day of the week at any time. If you brought me a double-double right now, I'd probably start eating it, okay? My wife, no. I'm like, every time she asks me where you want to eat, I'm like, well, for one, I think it's cheaper. So I'm like, this is a good place where you can eat. It's cheaper, right? So I'm like, we can go to Miguel's or In-N-Out. And she's like, okay. This is the classic thing, right? All the husbands are like, amen, dude. They're like, I don't know, you choose wherever you want. And I'm like, all right, let's go to Miguel's. She's like, no, not Miguel's. Okay, that's fine. But wherever you want, that's fine. Just anywhere but Miguel's. Okay, let's go to In-N-Out. No, I don't want In-N-Out. And so there have been times, like I remember when we were dating, we'd spend like a half hour in the car just trying to figure out where to eat. And you're just wasting time and getting more hungry, and then you just both start getting angry because you just want food, and some dumb fight happens, and not even worth it, right? But our culture hates the idea of having to sacrifice anything. In fact, our culture teaches the idea that you shouldn't have to sacrifice anything. These are all ideas that are infiltrating our culture, and dare I say, infiltrating the church. And the problem is that we are in a consumer mentality. And if you look at online shopping and Black Friday, people are getting trampled to death over like an Xbox. Seriously? And this is our culture right now. We want what we want when we want it, and we don't want to have to answer any questions or answer to anybody. And that is not the heart of Christ. And if you bring a consumer mentality into the church, it will be toxic. Because when you bring the consumer mentality into the church, this is what happens. You look at other people who are supposed to be indispensable counterparts of the body of Christ. You're supposed to be unified with them and together with them. And when you bring a consumer mentality into the church, you look at other people as dispensable parts. And you start to say, well, I don't really like her, so I'm just not going to talk to her. And if we go back to our text for a minute, he says, and if the ear says in verse 16, I'm not a part of the body because I am not an eye, would that make it any less a part of the body? Verse 21 says, the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head can't say to the feet, I don't need you. Can you imagine if your body started doing this? One morning you wake up and your feet are just like, nope. And you get out of bed and you just fall on your face. And you're like, hey guys, can you go? Like, we need to get going here. I got to get to work. And your feet just checked out for the day. They were like, no, we're on vacation today. Brain said go, we said no. Can you imagine? And when this happens, what do? We kind of freak out, right? It's kind of scary. My wife had ear infection towards the beginning of our marriage. By the way, our anniversary for 2 years is next weekend. Yeah. Time flies. It's been amazing. Maybe 6 months into our marriage, she got an ear infection. And I remember she woke up one morning and she was going to get ready for work and she lost her balance. And she actually fell. And she started crying, and I would probably start crying too, because like you're trying to walk and you can't walk. There's something wrong here. And I was like, hey, what's wrong? And she was like, I don't know. I can't walk. Like I can't even, like, things are spinning and I can't even walk straight. I'm falling over. And so we go to the ER and found out she had an ear infection. The text says there are these parts that are absolutely necessary, and we tend to forget about them. They're kind of buried in the background. Your equilibrium is something that you don't pay attention to every day. But when it is off, it changes everything. And I remember thinking, man, this is crazy. She has a little ear infection, and it's thrown off her equilibrium, and she can't walk. Because there are little parts of the body that may seem insignificant and not that vital or not that important, but then when you mess with them, it changes everything. And that's part of what Paul is saying today. In verse 21, he says, the eye can never say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head can't say to the feet, I don't need you. And he says in 22, in fact, some parts of the body that seem weakest and least important are actually the most necessary. I got in a really bad car accident. I think I've told you guys this before. I got rear-ended at like 65 miles an hour in 2016. I just got engaged to Natalie, and I was actually driving to her work to just say hello to her. And she got off early, so we probably passed each other on Ontario Avenue. And so I saw her store had closed when I got there, so I turned around and started driving home. My phone died. I tried to call her. I was on the Bluetooth. Okay, all the moms that are like, you were on your phone while you were driving. Okay, I was using the hands-free thing, right? And then my phone died, and I was like, well, that's great. So I'll just go back home, and maybe she'll be at the house. I don't know. And so, because we were supposed to go to dinner that night. So I stopped at the stoplight, and I hear these tires squealing. And if anybody's ever been in a car accident, you know how fast it happens. It's like one moment, everything's fine. The next minute, you're like, whoa, everything's different. And so I looked in the rearview mirror just in time to see some headlights, and I got rear-ended. Car was totaled. And my family is really wonderful at picking up the phone. No one answers their phone. I also don't answer a lot of time. It's in the blood, I guess. But so I called everybody 7 times on a stranger's phone. He's standing there like, dude, what's going on? He thought I didn't have a family. I was just lying to him. I was like, I promise I have a family. They live in Corona. I promise they have phones, okay? So anyways, they all show up. But the point I'm trying to make is that later that night, and, I saw Todd in here earlier. Todd's a chiropractor. He knows all about this stuff. And anybody who's had a neck injury, so you have all this soft tissue in the front of your neck, right? And I'm going to butcher this. Todd could give us a whole science lesson. But basically, you have all these muscles and soft tissue. And when you get hit like that, your neck whips back, and you have whiplash. So I remember I laid down. And at first, you have all the adrenaline and stuff, and your body's like, woo, that was crazy, right? And then an hour later, you're like, oh man, everything hurts. So I was dumb, and I told the fire department, look, I played football. I've had concussions before. I don't have a concussion. I'm fine. I don't need to go to the hospital. Every woman in here is typical man right now, right? And so I told them I was fine, and I just went home. And I remember I laid on the couch, and Natalie asked me a question. I went to lift my head, and I was like, and I couldn't lift my head. And I was like, whoa, this is not good, right? And I found out I had severe whiplash and I had damage. And for 3.5 weeks, I could not lift my head off the pillow. And so I actually had to use my arms to lift my head. And your head's really heavy. You don't realize how heavy your head is until you got to lift it without thinking about it. And there was this idea that the other parts of the body suffered with my neck. And the other parts of the body stepped in to supplement and to help aid the parts of the body that were hurting. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty great picture of what the church is supposed to be like. It should be that when one of us is hurting in this place, we step in and we fill in the gap. It should be said of the Church of Jesus Christ that when one of us is broken and when one of us is not functioning properly, when one of us is suffering, the church would step in and they would suffer with that person. Yeah? And I think that that's the heart of Christ, and I think that that's what Paul is trying to say in the text. There's this idea of being dependent on each other. If you think about when you stub your toe, there's a million illustrations, right? When you stub your toe, does your toe react solo, right? You stub your toe and your toe's just ooh. No, when somebody stubs their toe, you're like, oh! Brian Regan, who's a comedian, he talks about when you walk through a spider web, how no one else knows what's going on. So you just look insane. You're walking and you're just and everybody's like, whoa, that guy's crazy, dude. And you're like, no, it's just a spider web. That's kind of when you stub your toe, it's one of those things, it's kind of a low-key thing, nobody really sees you stub your toe, but you stub your toe and you're like, ah! I have an Italian family, everything is loud. Okay, my dad has a really bad habit of burning his hands in the kitchen. He has burned his hands so many times. He makes pizza and all this stuff, it's great. But he always burns his hands. And growing up, that was his line is always doggone it. That's like his line. And I can't tell you how many times growing up I heard doggone it. And I walk in the kitchen, I'm like, hey, you all right? He's like, I burned my hand. I'm like, how many times you burn your hand, man? We have like oven mitts sitting right there. I don't know what's going on. But this is for years of being called out up here. I don't feel bad at all. Hey, how did he get a mic? He's supposed to be off today. But there's this idea that when the body is hurting, when one part of the body is hurting, the whole body reacts. And I think one of the hardest parts about being in ministry is the number of funerals that we have to be a part of. And I'm not complaining. It's an honor to be a part of a celebration of somebody's life.
You'll hear more from Pastor Shane in a moment.
Are you enjoying the enriching teachings of Pastor Michael on Walk in Truth? If you're a longtime listener, we need your support to keep spreading Pastor Michael's unique insights as he teaches through the Bible. By becoming a monthly partner with just $20, he'll help us cover the costs of radio airtime and with podcast production. Your donation also ensures that more people can access Pastor Michael's teaching and bonus material on the free Walk in Truth app. Please join us in our mission to equip believers like you with God's truth. Visit walkintruth.com and click on the donate button today. That's walkintruth.com and click on donate. And thank you for your support.
You can listen to Pastor Michael's teachings on the Walk in Truth podcast as well. You'll find Walk in Truth on your favorite podcast app like iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. Now you can listen to Pastor Michael's teachings in 1 Corinthians and many other books of the Bible on your morning walks, maybe on your evening bike ride, or when you're cooking in the kitchen. Never miss a moment of Pastor Michael's teachings with the Walk in Truth podcast, available in your favorite podcast app. Subscribe for free today, and thanks.
We'd love to see who's listening, so please connect with us on Facebook or Instagram. Just do a search for Walk in Truth Show. Now, back to Pastor Michael's son, Pastor Shane, on Walk in Truth.
I'm like, how many times you burn your hand, man? We have like oven mitts sitting right there. I don't know what's going on. But this is for years of being called out up here. I don't feel bad at all. Hey, how did he get a mic? He's supposed to be off today. But there's this idea that when the body is hurting, when one part of the body is hurting, the whole body reacts. And I think one of the hardest parts about being in ministry is the number of funerals that we have to be a part of. And I'm not complaining. It's an honor to be a part of a celebration of somebody's life. But there is oftentimes this picture is displayed when we come together to celebrate somebody's life. Bill Brock, who was a part of our church for many years, a great man of God, passed away recently from cancer, a long battle with cancer. And it is a cool thing to see the body come together and celebrate, but also be able to hurt with each other. And be able to look at somebody else in the eyes and say, hey, I may or may not totally understand what you're going through, but I'm here for you. We're going through the book of Job on Wednesday nights. Job lost everything. If you don't come on Wednesday nights, you should come on Wednesday nights. Because talk about the term that we've been using a lot on Wednesday nights is this idea of redemptive suffering. And sometimes God uses the worst situations in our lives and the worst things that could happen in the church to bring us together. Did you know that the underground church in China right now is thriving at its greatest peak right now because of the level of persecution against the Christian church? Pastors who are leading the underground church in China are saying that they want the persecution, hear this, they want the persecution to continue because they see the way that it brings the church together. Man, we have it too easy. We get to come here and we get to pretty much do what we want. And we have freedoms that we take for granted. And I think that sometimes we've become so consumed with what we want, when we want, how we want it. We want things to look the way we want them to look. We want them to sound the way we want to sound. We don't like when the pastor tells that many jokes, but if he tells this many jokes, that's okay. But I need this much theology and I need this much humor. And it becomes church shopping. Because we've all said that before. We're church shopping right now. I'm not judging you if you've said that before. I've said it, right? I've not really church shopped too much. But I've heard people say it, right? And so, yeah, I don't really like the pastor here. He's, right? And so we get into this idea where it's like, I want what I want. Cool, but this isn't about you. This is about Jesus. You don't go to your friend's birthday party and say, I don't like chocolate cake. Nobody cares what kind of cake you like. It's not your party. Come on. Now look, there are different ways to worship. There are different styles of churches. There are a million different ways. There's a whole smorgasbord of ways to worship God, and a lot of them are great. But here's what I would say to you. If something is not your preference, it's okay. We all have different preferences. But I would love to see the church be unified, even in the midst of disagreements, because that's the heart of Christ. That's what you seek in your marriage and your relationships is that, you know what, honey, I don't agree with you at all, but it's okay. My friend is remodeling a house they just bought right now, and him and his wife, he said, it's been going great. They pretty much agreed on everything. And I was like, just wait for it, right? And then he said the next week, they were putting in cabinets, and it's just the littlest things turn into the biggest things, right? And it was about the handle on the cabinets, right? He wanted the long, skinny, like contemporary-looking ones, and she wanted the like old-fashioned, like scoop ones, and they couldn't agree on it. And they got in this big fight, and he was like, and it was so stupid because when we look back, it was like handles on the drawers. You know, you might touch those a couple times a week. He doesn't even cook, so I don't know why he's even talking. I told him that, but I think it's the dumbest little things that get in the way of what we're actually here for. Diversity is not a hindrance to unity, yet it is necessary for it. Diversity is not a hindrance to unity, it is necessary for it. Because unity cannot be accomplished without diversity. If we are all robots that have been cloned and we come in here and we all think the same way and we agree on everything, that's not true unity. True unity is accomplished in the midst of diversity. So that means that when I don't necessarily see eye to eye on everything with you, I can still say, okay, but I'm going to look past that. Now, there are essential things that are very important, but there are some things, church, that just don't matter. They really don't matter. And they're subjective, and everybody in the room would have a different opinion on it. I tell people all the time, I could listen to a song right now, and it could move me, and I could be like, wow, this is the best, greatest song I've ever heard. And then I could show it to Sandlin, and Sandlin could be like, I hate this song. And her opinion would be just as valid as mine, because it's subjective, and it doesn't really matter. The problem becomes when I start taking offense to that, or when Sandlin starts saying, you can't listen to that song. I'm like, well, why? Is it not God-honoring? No, I just don't like it. Well, then why does this matter? It doesn't matter. And I feel like that's what happens in the church a lot. If we were all exactly the same, agreed on everything, held the same views, political opinions, the list goes on. The kids are in here today. If you all like the same cartoons, all the same stuff, that's not unity. Unity is when I don't necessarily see eye to eye on everything, but we move forward anyways in love. Christianity at its core is built on the idea that each one of us has been made uniquely in the image of God. And there is this idea of interdependency in the church. Interdependency is God's design for the Christian church. When you're hurting, you want somebody else to step in and be there for you. And you should do the same for someone else. Pride is at the root of a lot of the issues that we face. And Paul says, we ought not to think of ourselves too highly. In Romans 12, he says, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought to, but think of yourself with sober judgment. I love that. Basically what Paul is saying is, be real. You're not that great. Right? He's just like, okay, look, when you think about yourself realistically. And it's so easy to see all the things we don't like in somebody else, right? How many grew up with siblings? Okay, so this is like true of all siblings, right? How many kids in here got in a fight with your brother or sister this morning? Yeah. Yeah, look at honest families here. I love it. Okay? There's this idea that we can't think of ourselves higher than we should. And that kind of leads us into this idea that we're going to see later in the text, but I want to read this to you real quick. This is from a commentary from Stephen T. He says, many people hop around different communities looking for the right fit. If we are all members of a local church, we are indispensable, or you could say irreplaceable. And all of the other members are indispensable parts of our lives. They too are part of the body that God has put together to display the beauty of the gospel. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with going to different churches and trying to find a fit. I'm not saying that. In fact, all of you ended up here because you did that. And there is something to be said for going into a place of worship and examining and making sure that they're holding true to the scriptures. But my point goes back to, what hills are we willing to die on? And if it's, we've heard stories of church splits that started at a church potluck because a pastor was angry that a kid got a bigger piece of carne asada than he did. And you're like, what? Or we've heard stories of churches, and when you really strip it down, there's all these other things that came from the initial disagreement, right? But when you really pull back the veil, you find out that nobody liked the carpet color, and everybody was mad. And, Nancy thought it should be green, and Jackie thought it should be red. Terrible colors. I don't know why I said those colors. And, it really boils down to something that doesn't even matter. God's heart for us is that we would be unified and that we wouldn't major on the minors.
You've been listening to One Body, Many Parts, Part 2 on Walk in Truth. That's Pastor Michael's son, Pastor Shane's teaching in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 12 through 27. Now, we have pastors on staff that would love to speak with you if you need prayer or counsel. Or perhaps you have questions about Jesus and the Christian faith. Call Walk in Truth Tuesdays through Fridays during daytime hours at 844-48-TRUTH. That's 844-48-TRUTH. 844-48-TRUTH. Now here's Pastor Michael with a final word.
Well, we've been talking a little bit about maybe those who are in the body and don't have the more visible gifts. And we might ask the question, well, how can I honor people who maybe don't always get a whole lot of recognition? That resonates with me, and I like to do that, and we all could probably be better at it. And one way we do that is we weep with those who weep, and we rejoice with those who rejoice. Something we try to do as a staff is we send cards out to people that we all sign. Maybe somebody who's going through a tough time or a loss or is trying to recover from a surgery or whatever. We have a meals ministry where people extend, Christ's love through preparing a meal and many other ways. And so you don't have to be in a formal ministry to do that. You can text somebody, you can write them a note, you can phone them, you can make a meal for them. You can find ways, practical ways to meet needs to show Jesus' love for them. That's what the body does. When one part of my body hurts, the rest of my body knows about it, right? And tries to take care of that part. And that's really the analogy here. And yes, would to God that we would get better and better at loving all parts of the body well. And if you want to be part of that solution, one way to get that going is make sure you're part of the body, right? Make sure you're a Christian if you're not. And then if you're a believer, get connected to some believers, whether it's in a house church or a congregation that meets in a church building. Make sure you're connecting with believers so that you can honor others and minister to parts of the body. That's the key. Hey, if we can help you in any way with that, we've been telling you a lot of ways to contact us. One way that you can do that is by calling this number, 844-48-TRUTH. We have pastors here Tuesday through Friday, 9 to 4 Pacific time, 844-48-TRUTH. Perhaps you have a Bible question. You need some prayer. You need some encouragement. Maybe you just opened up your heart to the Lord. Maybe you have a question about a local fellowship that you'd like to plug into. We'll try to be as helpful as we can at 844-48-TRUTH. We'll see you tomorrow.
If you missed any part of today's program, Walk in Truth is on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and more podcast apps. Listen for free to Pastor Michael's teachings in more books of the Bible. And join us tomorrow for the conclusion of Pastor Michael's son, Pastor Shane's teaching in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, called One Body, Many Parts.
Our emotions are fickle. Our heart is fickle. It's fleeting. Our emotions can change in a moment. Emotions are a gift from God. They're a blessing in their proper place and context. But if I start to say that urge, and this is our culture right now, that urge that you have, that's who you really are. Chase that. Follow your heart. You want to do that and you keep feeling like you want to do that thing, so you need to do it because you're neglecting who you were meant to be. Those are sinful urges, and God is telling you, fight the temptation.
I'm Mike Massaro. On behalf of Pastor Michael Lantz and Living Truth Christian Fellowship, thanks for listening to Walk in Truth, equipping you to reach out with God's truth to all people.